Hi, welcome to the quiz. You can answer along on quizalto.com, all for free. The exact URL of this quiz will be in the notes down below. Let's get started, good luck. What is the function of weighted targets in AWS App Mesh routing? Enforcing cross-origin request policies. Creating redundant data backups. Optimizing server-side caching. Distributing traffic based on defined weights. Weighted targets in AWS App Mesh routing allow users to distribute incoming traffic across different endpoints based on specified weights, enabling load balancing and traffic control strategies. What is the purpose of service mesh encryption in AWS App Mesh? Securing data communication between microservices. Enforcing RESTful API design principles. Optimizing CPU performance in containers. Automating SSL certificate renewals. Service mesh encryption in AWS App Mesh is used to secure data communication between microservices within the mesh, ensuring data privacy and integrity across the network. What is the role of route prioritization in microservices communication with AWS App Mesh? To define the order of route evaluation. To encrypt all traffic. To limit the number of services in the mesh. To enforce strict data validation rules. Route prioritization in microservices communication with AWS App Mesh helps define the order of route evaluation, allowing for prioritized traffic routing based on defined rules and policies. What is the benefit of using mirroring in microservices testing with AWS App Mesh? To compare behaviors of new configurations without affecting production traffic. To increase network congestion intentionally. To automate security audits. To limit access to monitoring tools. Using mirroring in microservices testing with AWS App Mesh allows users to compare behaviors of new configurations without affecting production traffic, enabling safe testing and validation of changes. What is the primary advantage of using AWS App Mesh for microservices networking? Optimized database query performance. Automated DNS registrations. Increased VPN network speeds. Simplified service discovery and routing. AWS App Mesh simplifies microservices networking by providing tools for service discovery, routing, and traffic management within a mesh network. How does connection pooling benefit microservices communication with AWS App Mesh? By enforcing strict data validation rules. By encrypting all communication channels. By reusing connections and reducing overhead. By increasing network latency. Connection pooling benefits microservices communication with AWS App Mesh by reusing established connections, reducing overhead, and improving performance for repeated requests within the service mesh. Why should service mesh architecture with AWS App Mesh implement rate limiting? To prevent abusive API usage and control traffic volume. To reduce network latency. To disable all network traffic. To limit the number of services in the mesh. Implementing rate limiting in service mesh architecture with AWS App Mesh helps prevent abusive API usage and control traffic volume, ensuring efficient resource utilization and avoiding overloading services. How does AWS App Mesh help in simplifying microservices deployment and management? By introducing network complexity. By providing centralized and automated controls for traffic management. By restricting communication between services. By limiting service discovery capabilities. AWS App Mesh helps in simplifying microservices deployment and management by providing centralized and automated controls for traffic management, reducing the manual efforts required for deployment and operation. How does AWS App Mesh help with managing network segmentation for microservices? By limiting server access. By enforcing database schemas. By disabling networking protocols. By defining logical boundaries and policies. AWS App Mesh helps with managing network segmentation for microservices by defining logical boundaries and policies to control communication and access between different services. What is the benefit of using mesh policies in AWS App Mesh for microservices communication? To automate server provisioning. To enforce security and operational rules across the service mesh. To restrict access to specific microservices. To manage network firewalls. Mesh policies in AWS App Mesh help enforce security and operational rules across the service mesh, ensuring compliance and consistency in communication pathways. What is the advantage of using dark launches in microservices deployment with AWS App Mesh? To test new features without exposing them to users. To enforce strict data validation rules. To disable all network traffic. To increase network latency intentionally. Dark launches in microservices deployment with AWS App Mesh allow testing new features without exposing them to users, ensuring smooth transitions and minimizing impact on users. What is the purpose of creating a route in AWS App Mesh? Optimize SSL certificate rotation. Set up DNS configurations. Manage IAM policies for services. Define how requests are routed to virtual services. Creating a route in AWS App Mesh allows users to define how requests are routed to specific virtual services within the mesh. What does AWS App Mesh use to manage traffic between microservices? HA proxy. Jinx server. Envoy proxy. Apache Tomcat. AWS App Mesh utilizes the Envoy proxy to manage traffic between microservices, providing features like service discovery and load balancing. How does AWS App Mesh contribute to microservices scalability? By providing automated load balancing and traffic management. By increasing latency in service communication. By limiting the instances of services. By restricting access to service data. AWS App Mesh contributes to microservices scalability by providing automated load balancing and traffic management capabilities, allowing for dynamic scaling of services based on demand. What is the advantage of using AWS App Mesh for microservices deployment? Improved scalability and manageability. Reduced security and performance. Decreased reliability. Increased complexity and latency. One advantage of using AWS App Mesh for microservices deployment is improved scalability and manageability, making it easier to scale and operate microservices. What is the benefit of implementing retries in AWS App Mesh? Reducing CPU usage in containers. Optimizing SSL handshake times. Enabling autoscaling for EC2 instances. Improving fault tolerance for network requests. Implementing retries in AWS App Mesh improves fault tolerance for network requests by automatically retrying failed requests up to a specified limit to increase reliability in communication between microservices. How does AWS App Mesh handle communication between microservices? Through API gateway endpoints. Through message queues. Through direct TCP connections. Through sidecar proxies. AWS App Mesh handles communication between microservices by using sidecar proxies that manage traffic and perform functions such as service discovery and load balancing. What is the advantage of using distributed tracing in microservices architecture with AWS App Mesh? To increase security for communication. To provide end-to-end visibility and debug performance issues. To restrict access to specific microservices. To limit the number of concurrent requests. Distributed tracing in microservices architecture with AWS App Mesh provides end-to-end visibility into request flows, allowing users to debug performance issues and optimize communication pathways. What is the significance of protocol-based routing in AWS App Mesh? Enables direct VPN connections. Simplifies API endpoint configuration. Reduces latency in TCP communications. Allows routing based on different protocols. Protocol-based routing in AWS App Mesh allows for routing requests based on specific protocols, enabling flexible communication between microservices based on the required protocol. What is the primary advantage of using Envoy proxy with AWS App Mesh? Enhanced visibility and control over network traffic. Reduced API gateway latency. Improved database query performance. Streamlined Lambda function deployment. Integrating Envoy proxy with AWS App Mesh offers enhanced visibility and control over network traffic, allowing for better management and monitoring of microservices communication. Why is AWS App Mesh useful for microservices governance? It limits access to service data. It increases service independence. It complicates troubleshooting processes. It provides centralized control and policy management. AWS App Mesh is useful for microservices governance as it provides centralized control and policy management for enforcing governance policies and standards across microservices. How does AWS App Mesh help in managing microservices communication? By encrypting all communication channels. By limiting the number of simultaneous transactions. By decentralizing control over communication. By providing centralized traffic management and monitoring. AWS App Mesh helps in managing microservices communication by providing centralized traffic management and monitoring capabilities for better control and visibility. What is the primary benefit of using AWS App Mesh for microservices monitoring? Reduced security of communication. Increased latency in communication. Visibility into network performance and reliability. Limited monitoring capabilities. The primary benefit of using AWS App Mesh for microservices monitoring is the visibility it provides into network performance and reliability, helping to identify and troubleshoot issues efficiently. What is AWS App Mesh used for? Configuring S3 bucket permissions. Automating EC2 instance deployments. Managing microservices communication. Creating IAM policies. AWS App Mesh is used for managing communication between microservices in a cloud environment. What is the purpose of AWS App Mesh virtual routers in a service mesh architecture? Manage database resources. Automate software updates. Route traffic between microservices. Monitor server performance. AWS App Mesh virtual routers route traffic between microservices based on defined rules and configuration within the service mesh architecture. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.